And good evening. Welcome to Worldview Tube's Washington Report for this evening, Thursday evening, May 22nd, 2025. Joining us from our nation's capital is my co-host, Jim Paff of theconservativecaucus.org, theconservativecaucus.org. It's been a very sad day. We've done a lot of coverage here today on the murder of two Jewish young people who were reportedly about to be engaged next week when they went back to Israel. They were gunned down outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. last night, a little after 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We have covered it today on radio, and tonight on my broadcast, Brandon House Live, we'll have Alan Dershowitz. We'll have on Misha, Marty Goetz's daughter, Misha Goetz. Her name is now Misha Hoyt. She got married. Turns out Misha actually had dinner with the young lady that was murdered not too long ago. She'll share all that tonight with us on Brandon House Live, along with Alan Dershowitz, Shahram Hadian, and many others tonight as we continue to cover this terrorist attack, which is clearly a red-green axis. The red being the Marxist, the green being the Islamist. In fact, Trevor Loudon will be on Brandon House Live tonight because Trevor says this guy was aligned with a socialist/Marxist group. But don't count on many in the media, even the conservative so-called media, to tell you much about the red-green axis. They don't know much about it. But we do, because we've been warning about it for about 15 plus years now. The red-green axis. Carlos the Jackal, a Venezuelan terrorist, said that only a coalition between the Marxist and the Islamist can bring down America. That's what we just saw last night. But again, most of the media, even the conservative media, is not reporting this. Joining me now is, from the nation's capital, Jim Paff. Jim, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Good to see you, Brandon, on what is a very tragic day, very sad circumstance.
It is. And to think that happened with the FBI building just right there behind them, the Washington, D.C. Police Department headquarters just up the street. I mean, the idea this guy could just walk back, pace back and forth, be agitated, not stopped, go in the building, kill them, and then go in the building and tell the security guards what he'd done and where he hid the gun. Well, I don't know if you also noticed somebody in the building in that Jewish museum is shouting out a Jewish phrase, which means Allah be praised. Alhamdulillah. I mean, how did that guy get in the building? Something's going to have to go on with the security at these Jewish museums, event centers, synagogues. This was a real security failure in D.C. last night.
Well, it was. And Jewish events in general, people try to not publish them, apparently. But, you know, obviously the word's going to get around somehow. But they try not to let it get into broad publishing forms, media, papers or stuff. Somehow this guy seems, at least from the reports that I'm hearing, to have investigated what was going on and really crafted his agenda to try to find it. You know, it's an internal and external security issue. Obviously, the groups are going to be far more aware of what's happening, Jewish groups. But, you know, we do need our law enforcement to do some of the work. And, you know, Kash Patel wants to take the FBI outside of D.C. primarily, and I agree with that. But that doesn't mean there isn't crime here. And certainly the D.C. Police Department needs to be on top of it. And this is just tragic. Someone dropped the ball. Tragic death of a young couple with a whole life to live. Very frustrating. And we do have a real problem with insurgents here in the United States, however broad that is. This guy represents that for sure.
Well, indeed it does. All right. We're going to cover a lot of this tonight. As I said, Alan Dershowitz on my show tonight, as well as Misha Goetz Hoyt, who had the chance to have dinner with her not too long ago, got to know her at a dinner. She was hosted by the young lady that was murdered. We'll get to all that tonight. Let's go to what else is in the news today, Mr. Paff. I guess the big, beautiful bills passed the House, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it has. And listen, there's a lot of good in it. I have to say, though, Republicans are really missing an opportunity by not determining that they are going to make dramatic cuts to the federal budget. I've repeated it many times through this process. Spending levels in 2019 before COVID were about $4.5 trillion, just under that. If you keep those levels now, you would raise that with inflation, even crappy Biden inflation, you'd raise that to somewhere about $5.4 trillion. And it would nearly eliminate the deficit. And all we got to do is repeal all the new spending after COVID. It's very easy. It's not like we weren't doing way too much back in 2019. And it was a real opportunity, missed opportunity, in my opinion. Now, Russ Vought, the OMB director, is saying that this sets certain things in place that will allow for more spending cuts. The president's going to be sending over rescission bills, which is requests by the administration to draw back spending. That's going to be helpful and useful, but how far can they go with that? But the upbeat thing I'll leave people with is the Trump tax cuts, which were set to expire this year, are now permanently into law. If those taxes go up in the future, then they're going to have to go up through specific legislation. It used to be that we would let this stuff expire over a certain period of time and then come up with a new tax plan. That's not the case with this. And then there are a few other tax cuts. So overall positive, and there was some Medicaid reform, but we've got a lot more to do to cut spending in this country. And as I say, the weak part of the Trump agenda is Republicans in Congress.
President Trump, I guess, has signed an executive order yesterday releasing all the Crossfire hurricane data. Look at this. Here we go, guys, in the control room.
Next, sir, we have a presidential memorandum for your attention. This memorandum requires the immediate declassification of all FBI files relating to the Crossfire hurricane investigation. This was obviously one of the instances of the weaponization of law enforcement powers of prosecution against you and others. We believe that it's long past time for the American people to have a full and complete understanding of what exactly is in those files.
Which gives the media the right to go in and check it. You probably won't bother because you're not going to like what you see. But this was total weaponization. It's a disgrace. Should never happen in this country. But now you'll be able to see for yourselves, all declassified. Is that correct? Would you say? All declassified?
Yes, sir.
Everything?
The FBI file with there's a classified annex, but other than that, this we'll put everything in the public eye.
Is anybody going to look? What about you? You going to look? And frankly, the FBI should be ashamed of themselves, and so should the Department of Justice, and so should Biden.
All right, there you go. Jim?
They should be ashamed. Listen, this was an organized coup. Let's just call it for what it is. James Comey's out there saying his little 8647 ditty, which is a not so veiled assassination threat, is the guy is the one who he's trying to reframe what that post was, but he's behind Crossfire Hurricane. He said very explicitly that that when it came to the Michael Flynn thing, said when he was asked in an interview, how did those guys end up going over there from the FBI to interview him? And he said, I sent him. We know that there was a meeting in the Obama Oval Office the morning before Trump's inauguration in 2017. And we now know that that clearly was an organized effort to make sure everything else, to confirm everything was in order for taking Trump down. These people were putting together a coup using government assets, government bureaucrats, people in the FBI, the CIA, and elsewhere. John Brennan was in that meeting. Joe Biden was in that meeting. Susan Rice was in that meeting. Barack Obama was. This was an organized coup. And if they better not hold back any of these papers. We need a lot of papers and other issues released. But hopefully this can allow us to get to the bottom of it, because this was one of the greatest scandals in American history.
Yeah, indeed. Here's Caroline Leavitt today when asked about the video that was showed in the Oval Office in relation to the South African president who wanted to deny white genocide of the white Christian farmers. And that came up today, I guess, in the press briefing.
The video showed images of crosses in South Africa about white farmers who have been killed and politically persecuted because of the color of their skin. And those crosses are representing their lives. Those crosses are representing their lives in the fact that they are now dead and their government did nothing about it. Are you disputing that there's no...
I'm disputing the fact that the video showed what the president claimed it showed, because it did not show that. But even more, what I'm asking you is who at the White House...
No, it did show that. It showed white crosses representing people who have perished because of racial persecution.
Verifies the videos that the president shows, and what protocols are in place when there's unsubstantiated information being put out for the world and world leaders to
Yamiche,
show?
what's unsubstantiated about the video? The video shows crosses that represent the dead bodies of people who were racially persecuted by their government. In fact, the Associated Press, of all places, has a picture of that very monument, and the caption from the Associated Press is, "Each cross marks a white farmer who has been killed in a farm murder." So it is substantiated, not just by that video and the physical evidence that everybody saw on display in the Oval Office, but also by another outlet in this room, the Associated Press. So you should take it up with them if you believe the claim is unsubstantiated. And that's a ridiculous line of questioning.
It is ridiculous. That woman's as dumb. Either she's very, very deceitful, dishonest, or she's dumb. Maybe she's both. I don't know. Maybe. But I'll tell you, we produced a documentary 7 years ago here. We've played clips of it this week. We had a whole segment on this where they would put tires around people and light them on fire, call them necklaces. Nelson Mandela's wife was into it. Jesse Jackson even admitted that Nelson Mandela admitted to him that he was arrested right before he was about to carry out more terrorist attacks against hospitals and schools. So even Jesse Jackson knows what Mandela was up to. I'm talking about Nelson. And then there's the wife. To say when misinformation is put out, as though misinformation was put out, there was no misinformation. And this woman is either that stupid that she doesn't know about this story. Now, look, we did a documentary on this in our documentary, a part of it, 7 years ago. But we were covering it years before that. This is not a secret, particularly to anyone that's in talk radio, news, like myself. This is not a news story. I mean, you would have to be trying not to know about this if you're in the news, because you would be coming across it in your study of a lot of global news. So this woman is really, really dumb or dishonest. And part of me thinks that maybe she really is that stupid.
You know, I don't think she's stupid at all. Well, she may have some lack of mental capability, as anyone who is a persistent liar would. But it's very purposeful what they're doing and saying. They want to diminish this racist act that is happening in that country. And the president of that country has called for stealing the land. I'm not certain that he said that the people needed to be murdered, but he's certainly doing nothing to stop this. The rule of law is not in operation when it comes to land. Their claim is that this land's been there for so many generations. Okay, well, listen, there are a lot of inequities that take place, and I doubt that every instance is an inequity. What they're doing is killing white people on purpose. They're eradicating white people, as I discussed previously, just this week on our broadcast. This is, this thing is absolutely, and it's something that is the end result of the types of discussions and speech that we've been dealing with in the whole DEI component. Ibrahim Kendi and his ideas that white people are inferior is exactly the type of language that, given enough time, 2 or 3 decades from now, we could be in the same place that South Africa is in 2 or 3 decades from the breakdown of apartheid. We could go there. Anybody could. I don't think we will, but we could. They don't want to admit that this looks bad for them. And as to the crosses, it's absolutely true. Thousands of people have been killed because they're white and landowners in South Africa. They cannot dispute it. And these news media sites are still dedicated to the same censorship and lies and subterfuge that they've been doing for years. And this reporter that was challenging the White House there is among those. What that reporter said is abjectly false, and it is easily verifiable. The murder and pillage of property and people is taking place in South Africa.
Yep.
It's beyond dispute.
Yep, sure is. All right, here we go. I guess there was a little forum at the White House about junk food and cleaning things up. Here we go.
The second thing is that you mentioned, sir, in your remarks that we are on track to sign multiples of SNAP waivers to get junk food and sugary drinks out of our food stamp system. And I am so proud. I am so proud to announce that on Monday, I was in Nebraska with Governor Pillen, where we signed the first one. An hour ago, I signed the second one for Governor Braun in Indiana. He may not even know that. I've got it right here, sir. I also signed the third one, Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa, about an hour ago. With a half a dozen more coming down the line. And sir, that has never happened before. Under Republican or Democrat administrations, we have never made that happen before. So I am so proud and so grateful for your leadership.
Morrissey here, who was the first one to apply from West Virginia.
Oh, Governor Morrissey. We will make sure you're at the top of the pile, sir. I apologize. Governor Sanders has been a leader. Governor Polis from Colorado. It has been remarkable how these governors have stood up.
There you go. That's good news, right?
Well, I think the SNAP program has so many problems. One of the key ones being the types of food and products that they allow in it. And
right.
A lot of people would argue, why would the government do this? Well, I mean, until we can get rid of the SNAP program, if that's what we want to do, we should stop allowing junk food to be served to people. It actually causes great harm to people who really are struggling financially or who are in poverty. We're just encouraging bad behavior there. So I'm all for this. I think it's good that they're doing it, and they need to move very aggressively this year to finish all of this and make it happen the right way.
President Trump also had to say something about vaccines and autism. Here we go.
4 months ago, I created the Presidential Commission to Make America Healthy Again, and today the commission officially delivers its first report on childhood health. Here are just some of the alarming findings, and they really are alarming. It's unbelievable, terrible. More than 40% of American children now have at least one chronic health condition. Since the 1970s, rates of childhood cancer have soared in many cases by nearly 50%, 50%. Well, in the 1960s, less than 5% of the children were obese. Now over 20% are obese. A few decades ago, 1 in 1, think of this one. This is, to me, the one that gets me every time, and it seems to be getting worse. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. Today, it's 1 in 31. Last time I heard the number is 1 in 34, right? Now it's 1 in 31. There's something wrong, and we will not stop until we defeat the chronic disease epidemic in America. We're going to get it done. For the first time ever, this report examines some of the root causes that many believe are making our children sicker and our population sicker, I guess. It just doesn't stop with the children. It's our population also, such as the ultra-processed foods, over-medicalization and over-prescription and widespread exposure to potentially toxic chemicals. Unlike other administrations, we will not be silenced or intimidated by the corporate lobbyists or special interests. And I want this group to do what they have to do. We have to spell it out. In some cases, it won't be nice or it won't be pretty, but we have to do it. When you hear when you hear 10,000, it was 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 31 for autism, I think that's just a terrible thing. It has to be something on the outside, has to be artificially induced, has to be. And we'll not allow our public health system to be captured by the very industries it's supposed to oversee. So we're demanding the answers. The public is demanding the answers, and that's why we're here.
Right.
4 months.
There you go. He was talking about this when he was running for president the first time back in 2016.
Yeah, it's a big issue. You know, listen, we can argue about the science on it, and it's been many, many years that the scientific community has called everyone a fool, idiot, everything but a child of God, you know, related to questions about autism and vaccines. I have to tell you, I've been in relationship through so much of my life with 2 or 3 families, I think it was. Yeah, I can think of 2 families who had autistic children, and the correlation to their receiving their vaccines and showing signs of autism are profoundly similar. Again, correlation, we didn't know, and they didn't know for sure causation, but I've always been convinced that there's something here, whatever it is. And we have allowed vaccine manufacturers to be free of any liability for years under the premise that, you know, vaccines are so important, so therefore, you know, we want to make sure that the companies can make enough money to actually produce them. But it's been a flawed idea because it's a moral hazard, actually. In the insurance field, there's the concept of a moral hazard, which means you're setting up a situation for some immoral action to take place. And I think we've been doing that here. I'm convinced that there are problems. We have a real problem in the scientific community that because we've allowed government to twist the science where need be, the COVID situation being the worst example of them all. And there's been a lot on Capitol Hill in the last couple of weeks about that, which is highly revelatory. It's just some this week. We've got to change this paradigm. So I'm very glad that they're doing this because these medical companies have got to do proper science. We've seen it. We've seen people for years be berated for pointing out that there are problems, but the science has always been jimmy-rigged in favor of these major corporations, and that's got to stop. We have to have a neutral ground to understand what's going on. I am very pleased in this aspect of Robert Kennedy's work with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. In fact, President Trump tonight joking around with Secretary Kennedy. Listen to this.
Friend of Bobby, and he's been a foe, too. You know, he's tried to stop a couple of my jobs. In one case, he did stop a job, and I was really angry. And then about 4 months later, we went into like a depression, and I saved a hell of a lot of money by the fact that you stopped it.
You're welcome.
So I never minded. I always said, thank you very much for stopping that big job I was going to do.
Yeah, that sometimes works out that way, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. You know, what's really interesting to me about this relationship between him and Trump and him and all of us who are in the MAGA movement is that Bobby Kennedy's not a perfect conservative. He's got some ideas that I most assuredly disagree with. I disagreed with a lot of things in his past. What I love about the guy is he is an American. He believes in the American ideal. And the things that Donald Trump has him doing are exactly things that all of us can agree need to be done. And another thing, by the way, that Democrats are constantly fighting and trying to push back on, but they're going to help everyone in the country, particularly middle and lower class people who really need better health outcomes. They need good information on what they're consuming. And I'm very pleased. And you know, it's also, I want to say this about Donald Trump. What a magnanimous person. I just heard today, you know, Scott Adams, the creator of the Dilbert cartoons, he's got prostate cancer, and he announced recently that he should be dying this year. And Donald Trump called him up this week when he heard about it, just to tell him, you know, tell me what you need to do. I'll make it happen. We just kind of reached out to the guy, And I mean, Donald Trump is very Reagan-esque in this regard, very thoughtful and considerate of other people. So this was a really good day for the MAHA movement, and I'm looking forward to good outcomes from here.
Mm-hmm. Here we have the Supreme Court divided on Catholic charter schools. My friend over at the Liberty Council, Matt Staver, reports that today the U.S. Supreme Court deadlocked in a 4-4 vote in Oklahoma's statewide charter school board versus Drummond, with no opinion from the Supreme Court. The opinion of the Oklahoma Supreme Court stands, which allowed the state to exclude a Catholic public charter school from public funding. The facts of this case are unique because it involves a public charter school that is operated by a Catholic order. This case does not affect or apply to any school choice program where vouchers go directly to parents who select the school of their choice, which can include religious schools. The Oklahoma Attorney General sought to stop the state's charter school board from allowing an online Catholic school to become a charter school in order to receive publicly available education funds. In 2024, the Oklahoma Supreme Court previously ruled against the school, ordering the school board to cancel the contract. Today's High Court unsigned opinion consists of one sentence. The judgment is affirmed by an equally divided court. Justice Amy Coney Barrett recused herself. I guess, I don't know why. I guess because she taught at a court by the Religious Liberty Clemency, something taught for 15 years before becoming a federal judge, later a justice. All right, well, whatever. How do you feel about this, Jim?
I have this sentence to state. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There is no area of government, nowhere at all, that may restrict anyone's religious liberty or religious activity. Unless they're under the guise of religion, someone is doing very specific, brutal harm to a child, for example.
Right.
Like, there are rare instances like that where it's appropriate. Otherwise, it's absolutely inappropriate. There is no restriction on religious activity. We have been living under the false understanding that there is a separation of church and state, which everybody knows is a twisting of a letter that
it was a letter by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Association that a high wall separation must be maintained. But his intent was for the government to stay off the back of the church. The government, that's infringing. Whereas you and I believe that separation of church and state is we don't want a state religion, a state church, a one denomination over another. And Congress, as you said, shall make no law. So let me get this right. You can use taxpayer funds to fund the religion of humanism, which the Supreme Court ruled in a footnote to a decision that secular humanism is a religion. You can fund that all day long, but you can't let people have the choice of a Christian school or a Catholic school.
And there are two aspects of that clause. The establishment of religion, which is about a state church. That's entirely what it was about.
Right.
And free exercise. There's no, and by the way, state and local governments are restricted by the constitutional provisions as well. That's in the Constitution. They cannot stop that
right.
free exercise.
The conservativecaucus.org, that's our broadcast. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, guys. Take care.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.